As the saying goes, variety is the spice of life. We could tinker with that phrase just a bit and say spice is the variety of cooking, along with herbs and other seasonings. Without these stealthy flavor infusers, many foods would be big batches of blandness. In fact, for hundreds of years, the spice trade shaped civilizations, sustained economies, drove exploration, and led to cultural interactions that no one could have foreseen. As much as I would love to spend a week or two on the intrigue and historical implications of the spice trade, I'm going to stay in my lane and stick to culinary applications. But honestly, when you open the door to your spice cabinet, you should imagine angelic harps playing and feel a lump of gratitude in your throat. Yes, these days it only takes a few bucks and a few minutes in the grocery store to pick up most of them, but still, show some respect. First, what's the difference between a spice and an herb? In some instances, the distinction is fuzzy, but in general, spices come from the bark, stems, seeds, flower buds, fruits, roots, or rhizomes of aromatic plants. They're usually grown in tropical regions. Herbs are the leafy portions of plants, and they're usually grown in temperate regions. Woody herbs have tough stems and sturdy leaves. This group includes rosemary, sage, and thyme, among others. Woody herbs have an intense flavor, so they're usually used sparingly and rarely eaten raw. They have stable flavor compounds that hold up well during cooking, which also softens the leaves. Tender herbs, such as basil, parsley, and mint, have delicate leaves and stems. Their flavor is less intense than woody herbs, so you have to use them in larger quantities. The flavor compounds in tender herbs are volatile, which means they evaporate easily. For this reason, they're often used raw or added to a dish at the end of the cooking time. Oregano is a tender herb that should be treated like a woody herb. Its leaves are delicate, but the flavor is intense. Drying preserves the flavor of woody herbs nicely. Tender herbs lose a lot of their character when dried, so it's usually not a good idea to substitute the dried version if a recipe calls specifically for fresh herbs. When substituting dry for fresh, or vice versa, use a ratio of 1 part dried herbs to 3 parts fresh. Whenever you cook with dried herbs, you should crush them lightly between your fingers to release their oils. Some recipes call for a bouquet garni, which is French for garnished bouquet. This is a bundle of herbs, usually tied with a string, that is cooked with other ingredients and removed before serving. Sometimes herbs and spices are tucked into a sachet, which can be made from a bundle of cheesecloth, a coffee filter, or even a disposable loose tea bag. Some seasonings that sound like one ingredient are really blends of several. Curry powder, za'atar, and chili powder are examples of this. By the way, when you see chili powder with an I at the end of chili, it's a blend of spices. When chili ends with an E, it's a single variety of ground chili. To preserve flavor, herbs and spices should be stored away from sunlight, heat, or humidity. A kitchen cabinet that's not above the stove is ideal. These guidelines need to be balanced with the need for easy access. It's easy for jars or tins to get shoved to the back of an overcrowded cabinet and forgotten. If you store them on a deep shelf, it's a good idea to use a lazy Susan or tiered racks to keep everything within reach. In the test kitchen, easy access is top priority, so we forego the dark cabinet and use a wall shelf with the jars arranged alphabetically. We go through them quickly enough that they'll be replaced before the extra light has a chance to take a toll. We'll kick off our investigation of herbs, spices, and seasonings by preparing rosemary roasted potatoes. The equipment for this recipe is a knife, a cutting board, a rimmed baking sheet, a bench scraper, and a metal spatula. The ingredients are 1½ pounds of baby potatoes, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, 3/4 of a teaspoon of kosher salt, and 1½ tablespoons of fresh chopped rosemary. Before you get started, preheat the oven to 400 degrees. Strip the leaves from the rosemary by grasping the stem and pulling them downward against the direction of growth. Then just pick off the leaves at the top. Use a rocking motion to finely chop the rosemary, placing your free hand on top of the knife blade to stabilize it. If you end up with more than you need, you can mix the leftovers with kosher salt to create a ready-made seasoning sprinkle. Slice the potatoes in half. If the ones you're working with are bigger than a golf ball, you may want to cut them in quarters. Transfer the potatoes to a rimmed baking sheet and toss with the olive oil. Sprinkle on the salt and rosemary, then toss to coat. Spread evenly into a single layer. Bake 40 to 50 minutes, turning them after 25 minutes. Remove them from the oven when they're golden brown and easily pierced with a fork. Transfer to a platter and serve warm. These rosemary roasted potatoes are an obvious choice for a satisfying side dish, but they also make a tasty snack, especially when dipped in a dollop of sour cream. You can even add a fancy garnish and serve them as appetizers. Roasted potatoes are a blank canvas that can be transformed by swapping out seasonings. So why not look in your cabinet and create a spice trade of your own?